All right, welcome to, I guess, the first of a few days of updates. I, I think part of what throws me off with some of this is the fact that January started, or the year even started on a Tuesday. So I am already in my head trying to organize things on a regular weekly schedule. I forgot what day it was, what was going on. I'm just all over the place right now. But I'm trying to update my projects, work my way through to finishing up the month. Super excited about how well I've done with most of everything I needed to do. I mean, two of the four projects should be finished by the end of the month. And they're, oddly enough, they're the last two projects I did. The first two projects I started the year with will probably be about well, the book I might finish in, let's see, we started with January. Yeah, I'm already demonstrating why I don't do didn't do live streams before this year. I think I'll get better though. So 1, 2, 3, that's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. This is 4 weeks in. Might I finish the book by five? I think probably 6 weeks for a book, and then maybe 7 or 8 for the animation. Probably around 7 by the end of February, maybe. And the board game should be done, if not on Thursday, then by Sunday. Um, but the product puzzle coaster thingamabob, I gotta think of a way to describe that. If I'm gonna list it up as a listing for sale, I need to be able to describe it. Give it a nice simple title. Patriotic coaster and tray set. No, puzzle coaster and tray set makes more sense, I think, in that scheme. They'll see that it's red, white, and blue with stars and stripes. Um, but that I should be done by Thursday. And I mean, I was talking with somebody last night about this, where like I come up with projects all the time. I work on projects, and I always feel like I do a little bit, and I have to do something else, and I have to take care of this, and like I work on these projects because I enjoy trying to make these things real, but like legitimately committing myself to doing, like making them an actual project, not a thing I'm fiddling with, makes all the difference, I think. Because when I'm really thinking about it is at the end of February, if I have a book, an animation, a board game, a product or service, a food-based series, secret. I'm still trying to figure out how to make some of that work out, but and then uh, artwork and a video game. I mean, that's 7 things at the end of 2 months that, in and of themselves, would be like, oh, you achieved them. You wrote a book this year. Oh, you created a board game this year. Like most people do one per year, and I can understand why. But taking them seriously as if it is my job to do that, and devoting that level of, I don't even want to say commitment, but like respect to the ideas to make them something and not just a thing you're playing with. Treat them like they're something worth doing and take them seriously. And so, like, the realization is similar to years ago when when I first became very, very sick, and I was working a job, struggling to not die, essentially, and working my way through a lot of that. Um, I I had a very real sense that, like, I had lost half my body weight, and every day was just a pain-filled struggle. And I hit a point where, like, I don't know if I've got another year. And there's this event every year in November, is National Novel Writing Month. And the goal is to write a 50,000 word novel in a month. And I was like, I've seen that before, and I always forget about it. Like, I, I'll look into it when it's coming time to do that, and then I'd always forget. And then it'd be the end of November or early December, and I'd look and go, "Oh, I went past. I guess I'll get it next year." And I hit a point with my illness where I was like, "I don't think I got another year. I'm not sure I'm going to have another chance to try this, so I'm going to try it this year." And I managed to get some of my health under control, and it took me 10 years after that to kind of get myself back up to a modicum of fairly healthy. But in the meantime, that month of November, I started working on a project. Like, it was my purpose to work on that project. And I was at the end of the month, towards the end of the month, towards our Thanksgiving, it was 9 days before the end of the month. I had written 30,000 words, 25,000? Yeah, I think 25,000 words. And I'm like, this is a really deeply profound and interesting story that I really want to work on some more, but it's going too slowly to finish by the end of the month. I need to find something I can do to pad my word count. And I said, well, I could start a side story and just write some to that. Like, whenever I'm writing on my main story and I hit that wall where, like, it's dragging and I can't force it too much faster without ruining it, I'll just switch over to this side story and write. So I think I did like 2 days of that kind of writing before the side story just took off. And in those last 9 days of November, that first year, years ago, I wrote 50,000 words in the side story alone. And I finished like an hour before the end of the month. And this was back when I didn't have my own computer. I'd have to use the computer labs at the university that I was working at. And so it's just like I only had certain hours of the day that I could do it in, and I hit the end of that month, and this isn't a brag. This is like I didn't know how much I could do until I made myself do it. And I finished that, and I was absolutely amazed. My brain felt a little bit like Play-Doh. It just blew my brain out. Um, but I'm like, wow, in 9 days I wrote 50,000 words. And then they used to do a thing in spring, around spring break time for university students, whenever that is. Um, and it was called Script Frenzy. The goal was to write one script, a full script. I think it's like a 100-page script for a movie or a play or something like that in 1 month. And I said, well, if you figure that a 50,000 word novel was done in essentially 10 days, and there are 30 days in the month of November, I could write 3 novels in the length of the month if I really put that level of effort into it. Maybe a little over optimistic, but and then I got to thinking, like, 100-page novel, 100-page script is a lot less writing than a novel because it's mostly dialogue and stage direction, or maybe like paneling. And so I'm like, how do you do this? All right, scenes, shapes. Yeah, it's really like it's sort of like writing a, a lighter novel. And so I could probably do like 100 pages of a novel is like a third of a novel. So if I just round things out roughly, I said, like, how many do I think I could do in the month of, I want to say it was April, might have been March. But so I'm looking at it, I'm like, hmm, what kind of scripts do I want to write? So I did some looking around at the forums to find out what kinds of things people are working on and the categories they broke them up into. And there's like stage play, movie, TV series, comic book scripts, and a few of those kinds of things. And so I went, no, I think I want to do a stage play, TV series, comic, um, a radio play, and I might have done a movie too. I'm trying to remember. I'm like, so I gave myself the task of doing 5 scripts in a month, and I sat down. I said, this is gonna be hard, but if I only get 3 of them done, that'll be amazing. And I hit the end of the month, and again, I didn't realize how much I could achieve until I just tried it. It's like it's not costing me anything to do this. So I'm like, I could totally do this. And so I just gave it a go. And I was surprised at how well I did. I actually did write all 5 of my scripts to 100 pages. Now, the case with most of these things is there's more story to tell in each of them, so they need to be finished up further. But at the end of that month, I went, holy crap, I wrote 5 scripts for 5 different types of media in a month. What else can I do? I just so happened to be looking around at the end of National Novel Writing Month. Uh, there's a thing called Big Fun Scary Challenge. It's the year of doing big fun scary challenges together. And it's an active forum that I participate in regularly where we set ourselves monthly goals. But the real point is every year you make a list of those things that you say someday you're going to do, and then you commit to doing them, trying to achieve at least one of your goals by the end of the year. And I've been an active member of that community ever since. But the realization of I didn't know what I could do until I tried. Here's a list of all those things that I want to achieve at some point. I want to reach a point in my life someday and say, I did that. These are my someday I'm going to's. National Novel Writing Month is the someday I'm going to write a novel. Well, here's your someday. You write it on November 1st through November 30th. Well, Big Fun Scary Challenge is for all those other somedays. That's the way I sum it up. All those other someday projects, this is your shot. Start of the year, you make yourself a list of the things you're going to do, and then you just sit down and you see what you can do. Give yourself permission to do that. And so I started doing that. And since then, every year, I have been amazed by the number of things that I didn't realize I could do until I did them. And I think I've said before, it's not because I think I'm an amazing person. I think everybody has the ability to do this. And so, um, starting this year out, that's sort of been, I've had some setbacks over the last few years in the rest of my life. I am rebuilding and reworking through a lot of things. But at the core of it are these things of like, what's on my someday list? And what am I going to do with them? I'm going to do what I can to make them happen. And so this year, this project that I'm doing, I may not get a huge audience. That's fine. I just love the idea of having the challenge, challenging myself to make these things happen. these ideas, these projects, to be the creator of things that I dream of creating, or things I dream of existing for me. Like I would, if somebody else made these things, I would consume them because I'm fascinated by some of these things. Some of them I have to create myself because I'm the one who came up with them and nobody else is doing it. I I'm in love with them partly because I want to see it happen and nobody else is doing it, so I need to do it, I guess. But the idea that in January and February I'm going to potentially have a book, an animation, a board game, a product I can produce and sell online, artwork that I can sell prints of. I mean, I'm on the edge of experiencing that moment where like I could potentially be, I could be an artist in a gallery. I could be a game developer. I could be a novelist or a writer. And I can be all of those at the same time. Um, it's just like, and that's January to February. If I give myself a month between each of those, where I take the month off and reorganize and finish off any little stragglers or update or do whatever I need to do in that month in between, and then come right back to it. When you really think about it, 3 months, two of creating things, one of finishing up and taking a break. You can do that 4 times in a year. I could have 5 books. I could have 5 board games. I could have 5 video games. Or 4. I could have 4 books. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting a little ambitious there, throwing in that extra month. I could have 4 books. Am I doing my math right? It is kind of late. I've been bouncing my head off of things too long. 3, 6, 9, 12. Yeah, 4. So I could have 4 books, 4 animations, movies, or video shorts, um, and 4 board games, 4 products that are out for sale, 4 works of art, um, 4 video games, and I, in that time, meeting with other creators and networking and collaborating with other people, like that's that's the kind of year I want. That's the kind of 5 years I want to have. But if I can do it in a year, even if I can only do half of it this year, that's what I want my year to be when I reach the end of that. That's my goal for my year. My big, fun, scary challenge of a year. And like for a little kid who grew up his whole life thinking maybe he'll figure out what he'll work a job. I'll work. I worked, and I don't mind working like a retail shelf stocker, cash register. Those are jobs that I kind of valued the time I did in them. And I'd do some of those again. It's nice to have a reassured paycheck to show up to, do your work, you're doing your job well, and you go home and you have that paycheck you can count on each week. That's really nice. And it gets me out. It gets me to interact with people that maybe aren't part of the communities I maybe hang out in or do anything in. So there's value to those for me. But in the end of the whole plan, if you ask me who I was in my life, it's not going to be the guy who did the cash register at such and such a store, or who restocked the refrigerators at the kitchen, or any of that stuff. That's not who I am. It's what I did. Now, who am I? I'm the one who thought it'd be interesting to do some writing and did some writing. I'm the one who created board games. I'm a dabbler in creating things. I'm an explorer, an artist, a tinkerer, and I want at least a good portion of my story to be me doing those things. And so the thrill I get at the prospect of just giving myself permission to not only do those things, but be those things that I feel are so core to who I am. Now, this is just half of what I'm doing online. I've got I've got another channel I got going on, and that's equally important to me. And I'm thoroughly enjoying what I'm doing there too. Like I've done some things, and I'm hard on myself. I will admit this too. Um, I don't think I usually express this, but I have a friend of mine who, when I tell him about the projects I'm doing now and the things I did in this last year, he goes, "You do realize that's an amazing adventure. Most people don't do that." And in my mind, I understand what he's saying, but in my heart, I'm like, it can't be that great because I'm doing it. It's not impressive because I can do that. like, and I think that's a really jerky way to behave towards someone. If I were doing that to somebody else, I would feel horrible. But it's okay to do that to myself. But I do know that not everybody does these things, and not everybody has those same interests. I'm not trying to hold anybody to do those same things. Whatever your passion is, find it, embrace it, make it part of your story, do it, share it with people. Um, like the thing about doing this, I like the tonight I did the live reaction to watching a movie. I don't know if that's of interest to anybody, but I'm going to continue to do it because it's of interest to me. It's sort of like journaling and making it a journal entry other people can observe if they want to. Today, I watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I had some interesting questions, and it made me think some thoughts about ways to write similar stories or create similar movies. Like that's my thing, is like getting into exploring and feeling things about the creations in the world that exist out there for the exploring. You know, like I have legitimately an illness that makes food sometimes very dangerous to me. I don't react well to a lot of foods and I get very sick very easily. One of the categories of content that I regularly make is taste testing things. And that's not because I think people are necessarily craving to find out what I think of the new flaming hot Doritos or whatever. I don't think anybody really cares what I think about those. Maybe somebody does, I don't know. But I'm doing that because for 10 years, I was unable to digest even the simplest of things. My diet was literally four foods, the same four foods, every meal, every day for 5 years before I suddenly had problems digesting one of them and had to find an alternative. That was my food intake. And before that, I ate certain things every now and then, but I didn't do a lot of experimentation. But during that time when I was sick, I noticed all the things that I had never tried before, and at that time thinking, well, I guess I'll never know what that's like because I'm not going to ruin a week of my life in excruciating pain, losing weight and being violently ill for days on end to try a taste of that. It's not worth my time. I have the rest of my life I want to live. So I really felt like I wasn't ever going to be able to taste these things. Fast forward another 5 years later, and suddenly I'm going in for a procedure, and they asked me to do the stuff I need to do to clean my system out. And I said, well, I know exactly what's going to clean my system out. So I ate all the things that I can remember fondly eating when I was younger, things I loved. And the funny thing was, three-quarters of those things I used to love, I tasted them and went, how did I eat this crap? This is terrible. No part of this is good. Why did I like this? But I did find some that I really did still enjoy, and I did find some that I could eat again. And so it opened up my access to food again. And since then, I've been able to recuperate enough that I can eat certain things pretty regularly. And even when I go a little past what's safe for me to eat, it doesn't ruin a week. And so, of course, this is a quiet time. I know that I shouldn't push too far, but if I do this carefully, all those things I thought I'd never get to try, I can try. So I've got a backlog, just like a hard drive full of taste tests that I've done. I've literally like every week, one day every week for the last 2 years, 3 years, I've eaten things that I never thought I'd try. And I've had days where I've been very sick, and I've had some times where a day or two afterwards took me time to recover. But I've explored so many of those things I never thought I'd get a chance to try. And I've explored, you know, that's if you think 3 or 4 items a week for several years is a lot, I still have a huge list. I want to try ostrich eggs and alligator tail and durian and like I want to experiment with some of these things. I want to try them and not only try them to see what they're like, but come up with ways that I can do new things with them. Can I use uh, durian to make a fruit roll up? Can I use it to make a sauce that goes over something else that maybe is a weird choice? Like, can you make a durian sauce for escargot? And how well do they go together? Like, what kinds of interesting things can I do? What explorations and creative adventures can I do? And so my list of things to continue to explore food wise, it's huge. And I take the same approach to, you know, giving myself permission to be a writer, giving myself permission to be an artist. Like when I went to school, it's great that you want to do art, but what are you going to do for a job? Well, I kind of want to do all of this as a job. Now, I'm perfectly capable of living bottom of the barrel, cheaply poverty lifestyle if it means that I get to explore the things I want to explore and create the things I want to create. And sometimes that means, you know, you buy a laptop 2 years after you get the laptop, that one breaks. You scrounge for those last bits of funding to be able to put together another laptop. And within a year of purchasing that one, it's breaking again. So yeah, it happens. That's sometimes that's what the way I'm going to be living. I'm going to be fixing as much as I can, getting as much use in life out of junk materials. And I kind of like it. It's the challenge of, can you creatively solve a way to do this with what you've got? And I'm doing it. And, you know, this year is sort of a way of embodying some of that spirit with my video uploads, my daily video uploads, and the weekly projects. But it's also just sort of like, it is, it's living my life out loud. It's not keeping it to myself and thinking I'll do it someday. And I really hope that there's somebody else out there who realizes now that, those someday projects today can be that someday. Like, you don't have to set aside the rest of your life, and like, a lot of people make artificial barriers to entry for themselves. And the way I got to think about this is like, I can paint a painting on a canvas and not sell it. And I'm not any worse off than if I'd not painted it at all. I can I can make videos for YouTube endlessly and never have 40 to 50, 100,000, whatever. Like, I could endlessly make videos for YouTube that are things that I want to do, things that I want to share, things I want to create. And if I never make a dime of AdSense from them, I'm not any worse off than I was not making anything. Just saying it again, see if I can say this in a clearer way, is when I wasn't making anything and I wasn't selling any of the things I made, I got zero money. Nobody noticed the things that I thought up and didn't create because they're all locked up in my head. So nobody's noticing, nobody's inspired, nobody's creating anything inspired by what I gave them. Nobody's buying it. I'm not making a living from it. Nothing's happening. If I make these videos, if I make a painting, if I write a book and nobody buys them, nobody notices them, nobody's interested in what I'm doing, I'm not any worse off than I was before I created it. And I'm better off because something I wanted to exist in the world now exists. I'm happy about exploring my creativity, being a creator, and so, like, at that point, like, why wouldn't I do it? Why wouldn't I fully embrace this part? Like, it's not, I mean, yes, I have to occasionally buy canvas, or I can buy like a sheet of MDF, cut it into specialty shaped canvas pieces, uh, put some gesso on it, and use that as a canvas if I want to do some painting. That's going to cost me a little bit of money. Okay, I'll work 3 hours stocking shelves to afford that. That's not a huge loss to me. And I can work that job, have fun with other employees, help customers find things they want to do, and take value and pleasure from doing those things. But they also afford me the ability to explore myself and express myself in my creations. And so, like, yeah, a little bit of money here and there towards the thing that feeds your soul. That's not a real cost to me. That to me is an investment in yourself and your life. And so for me, yeah, it's not costing me anything that I'm not willing to give to do something, even if nobody cares or nobody's interested. I care and I'm interested in what I'm doing. And I really can't help but feel that even if it's only one or two other people, maybe it's 100 years from now when they're digging through the Internet archives, where this hits home enough for them that it matters to them and gets them living their life. That's cool. I mean, to affect the life of somebody like that, it's like some young kid who hears Mozart for the first time. Mozart's never going to know that kid was affected by that in any way. But if that kid goes on to, compose a techno music uh, routine that he plays at a club, that's and he gets reward for his own creations at that point. Like, the fact that something like that can affect somebody else, that's cool. That's cool that we live in a world where we can do that for each other. Whether or not my work ever does that doesn't matter as much as I'm fulfilling myself, expressing myself, and creating something that I wanted to see in the world. I think that's a good ramble for tonight. If there's something you want to do in the world, don't worry about whether or not it's going to be successful. Worry about whether or not it's going to be fulfilling to do it. Then just do it. Even if you get a crappy webcam, even if your computer's breaking and you have to tape pieces of it back together, I wouldn't use tape. Double epoxy, a couple reinforcing braces on that. I might do that in the next week or so. But is there something that would be fulfilling for you to do? And don't do it in the hopes that other people will appreciate it. Do it because you think it's worth doing and it makes you feel good to have done it. Do that. Be that. I think that's a good note to leave on. I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe with something a little more concrete than this wishy-washy philosophy crap. All right. See you tomorrow. Yeah, it would be great if that click button worked. There you go.